right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Covera, formerly Pipeliner CRM, joining you from sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by what the locals like to call across the pond in the UK, in London, by Laura McCracken. How are you doing, Laura?
I'm great. Thank you. Nice to see you, John.
Yeah, I never stood the across the pond thing, but anyway, I've adopted it. And Laura is the founder and CEO of the Board Alchemist and also of Blackheath Advisors, where you advise founders, chairs, CEOs, board members how to be more resilient, better governance, strategy, leadership. You have had leadership roles at Accenture, Meta, Amazon City, American Express. You served as the chairwoman, non-executive director on regulated financial boards, and you have lived and worked across London, Luxembourg, Singapore, New York, and Los Angeles. So, quite the gamut. And here's what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, tell me, I'm very fascinated about the Board Alchemist. Why you felt the need to set up something for, individuals, and people who are involved in boards, because that's quite a rare thing, because mostly it comes through kind of the board itself, like as in the company or the board or whatever. So tell me a little bit about the Board Alchemist.
Great. Well, the Board Alchemist is a convening platform. It's where we do events, thought leadership, workshops, training for individual board directors. But at the same time, we have Blackheath Advisors, which works with the boards themselves. Why did we do it? Because first of all, I set up Blackheath Advisors to help boards themselves to become more resilient. But I found that there was a thirst on the board members themselves to learn more, to really understand more. So, and one of the things I love, my passion, my own personal passion, is debate. So one of the first things I set up with the Board Alchemist were my board dinner debates. I have them, I don't know, you said you've been to London. I always have them at the Wolseley. There's a great private dining venue at the Wolseley. It's perfect. And it seats between 12 and 15 people, 15 max. And that's like the perfect number. I never like to take it above like 13 or 14 people. And I bring in chairs and CEOs. We sit around and we have a dinner debate over a certain topic. Maybe like, is AI going to take over in the boardroom? That kind of thing. The latest one is, do we really need a board? Can we just use a virtual board?
Yeah, having faced a few boards in my time, I don't know, maybe AI would be less intimidating. I don't know. But listen, one of the interesting things is, Laura, right? A lot of people, they're either the CEO and they become a board member, or at some stage of their career people want to be on boards. But I feel like people don't really know what the purpose or what it really entails. It just, to a lot of people, it sounds good, or you default into it because you happen to be the founder and CEO. Then you get investment, then you suddenly have a board. Tell me, when you talk to people, explain to me how you describe what the role really is and what a board should really be doing.
Well, there's always one very simple answer. It depends on where you live. If you live in the US, the answer is our purpose as a board is to look after the interests of the shareholders. It's your number one purpose. If you live in Europe, then the answer is our purpose is to look after the interests of all key stakeholders, which includes shareholders, creditors, employees, customers, and the regulators, and the whole ecosystem, whatever industry you're in. So there are two very different mindsets, and I am living in the UK, and I find that we're being tugged in both directions. But this really does matter, and it matters in a crisis situation. So when you're actually, I've been through a few crises in my time, and who are you looking out for? Are you looking out for your parent company, your shareholder, et cetera? So that's the number one purpose.
And what are some of the misconceptions that people have when they decide they want to be on a board, or whether they get appointed to a board?
They think it's glamorous. It's like joining a club. I'm going to have nice dinners and lunches. Everyone's going to look up to me. I'm going to have finally the prestige I've been looking for all my life. It's not exactly like that. First of all, the management team actually, sometimes there's a lot of friction between the management team and the board.
Yep.
I think if they could replace us with a virtual board, they'd be quite happy. Like, you guys are expensive. Your lunches are too expensive. We don't need you. We want to be left alone. So that's one thing. It's not all that you think it is. The other thing is that everyone has a boss. You think that when you're on the board that you're at the top of the food chain, but no matter what, there's always a power struggle between the shareholders and the creditors and the board and the management team. You may have a very powerful CEO. Look at Steve Jobs. You remember the whole Steve Jobs example?
Yes.
He hired a chairman. The chairman like pushed him out. That's always going to be the case. So you have to figure out how you're going to walk this fine line of ensuring that you have independence, your management team has independence, but you're also giving the right oversight. And then you're looking out for the right interests of the key stakeholders.
No, and absolutely, and it is that is a fascinating one. Is the board with the management team? I mean, how do you advise people to be effective in that communication? Like, if you're going to be on the board, to be effective, because I think, in all honesty, I think most people start out certainly with, so we say, a healthy skepticism about the effectiveness of the board, right? Many management teams do. And obviously, and boards don't, a lot of people, they don't really know the management team that well, especially when you start off. How do you advise people to approach a management team?
Yes, well, there are some very easy things you can do. Let me give you first an example of something that's gone wrong recently. It was just like a week ago. It hit all the newspapers. The chairman, Manifold of BP, that's British Petroleum, was ousted after 8 months. Now, why was he ousted? If you read the headlines say that he was ousted because he was a bully. He was overstepping his bounds. He was demeaning the executives. What else? He was using coarse language, and he was Irish, actually. So you might have heard.
Whoops.
I'm going to paint the picture for you. So that's what the headline said. But I wanted to dig deeper and understand what really happened. What really happened here? Because what I knew about BP is that they've gone through 4 different CEOs in the last 5 years.
Right.
And they've also been cycling through chairman. So there's something wrong here.
Yep.
And so I looked under the surface, and I first looked at Manifold, his record. I thought, well, the truth is, you asked the question about how do you be a good chairman. He had never been a chairman before.
Right.
He was a CEO of a big global cement business. It was, a massive kind of global manufacturing industrial based out of Ireland. He'd been very successful, 15 years as the CEO. And then they appointed him, the shareholders appointed him, because the shareholders wanted to pivot away from green energy. They wanted to move back toward oil and gas. They wanted to reduce costs, reduce the size of the board. They wanted to change the culture. And they thought, this is our guy. Well, the employees had a different idea. The employees had a totally different vision of the company. And so what you saw is this CEO be appointed as the chairman. He didn't know what he was walking into.
Right.
I don't think they fully prepared him. They didn't tell him what the culture was like. They didn't give him any feedback. The guy was totally blindsided when they got rid of him. Like, he basically showed up and his key card wasn't working. I mean, no feedback, no coaching. And I believe that even the chairman, John, deserves to have some proper onboarding. Know what you're walking into. Know what the culture is. You deserve to have feedback. Someone should pull you aside and say, this is not working. Let's work on this. Let's figure out a plan. And they should give you some chance to some communication, possible remediation. Even the chairman can be coached.
Well, it's a great concept, isn't it? It's like bringing you on, saying, hey, Laura, you're starting tomorrow, but I'm not exactly going to tell you what your job is, right? But I'll let you know if you're doing it well or not. And a couple of months later, I fire you. Sorry, you weren't doing it very well. You weren't doing it the way we wanted, even though we never told you what that was.
Yeah. But you see what I'm talking about. That's a perfect example of a governance. To me, it is so clear that they have a governance issue. And the
Mhm.
funny thing is I started blogging about it, and I know I'm onto something because you have no idea. I got so many emails
Mhm.
from BP employees. Not one person has said that I was wrong.
Right, 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 right. No, that's so, it's so interesting that, and again, as you said, you would think when you get to that level that there's so much more support and guidance and all of that, but there's actually less, right? Because
None,
again,
none.
it's a kind of forgotten thing. But you also talked on things like, things like culture and that.
Mm,
I mean, that's something that a board can obviously influence to some degree, but it tends to not really bubble up a lot in the boards, like to the higher level. Is that something that they should be looking at and aligning better with the organizations?
100%. 100. I'm glad you asked that. In the UK, actually, if you're in a regulated company, then you're required as a board. You own the culture.
Hmm.
You're responsible. You're accountable.
Right.
So, one of the things I do, I have a virtuous circle that I copied off of Jeff Bezos. He had a virtuous circle for Amazon, and I created the
Hmm.
virtuous circle for the Board Alchemist and for Blackheath Advisors. And it starts with governance at the top, which is kind of like your constitution, if you imagine
Hmm.
your structure. Then it moves on to leadership, making sure that you understand the collective leadership of the organization, and you can
Hmm.
assess that. We have some great assessment tools for that. And then it moves into culture. And the culture is where you've got the structure in place. Then you've got I shouldn't make hand gestures in case people are just listening to us. I'm Italian. I like talking with my hands. So you've got the structure in place. Then you assess the collective leadership, and then you start interviewing the key people, maybe the top 10 or 20 people on the board and around the board,
Hmm.
about how the leadership is impacting the culture. And that those interviews really bring out. So once you've got the assessment in place, those discussions can bring out some rich background and rich context for what's going on. And then you move on to like board level strategy, which is every
Hmm.
board must do once a year. And then my favorite, and this is where a lot of stuff comes out, is that crisis simulation
No.
at the end. So that's the fifth pillar. So, and the fifth pillar is where you're pressure testing your leadership, your governance, your culture, and the strategy. And you're pressure testing it I put the board members in a room all together. First, we go through board level strategy. So that's the first part of the day, strategy
Hmm.
lab. The second part of the day, we throw a crisis on them,
Right.
a ransomware demand. You've been hacked, you've got a cyber attack, and this has happened, or your CEO has just been arrested on something. I don't know. So you throw out. I've got a list of
Right.
20
Right.
crises, and during crises, that's when you really find out what people are really made of.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess that's one of the things is that, when you're selecting a board or you're putting a board together, probably looking for people who are able to, who are able to adapt in a crisis, maybe adaptable people who aren't going to kind of, you just get thrown completely if or overreact. 'Cause, I mean, in a crisis, you need calm heads to begin with.
Yes, absolutely. You want to be able to have a calm head when the sky is falling. You mentioned adaptable. I call it agility,
Yeah.
and that's the same thing. But it's just about, for me, agility is a little bit better word than adaptable, and I'll tell you why. Because you've got to have agility implies you have a really strong core,
Hmm.
so you know where your North Star is. You know what your values are. Your core. It's like the keel of a boat, right? You're really centered, but you're agile.
Hmm.
So you're able to move with the demands that are required of you while still not wavering. And my example on that one about someone who maybe wavered too much is poor Keir Starmer. I feel sad for him. Did you hear about he resigned today?
Oh, did he?
Yeah. I felt bad for him because he was a good guy. He wasn't a bad person, but he was challenged because he was too adaptable. So one day he would say this policy, like let's do this, and the next day he would change his mind and say, okay, well they didn't like that, so let's flip. So he was too adaptable, and
Right. Right.
we all wanted him to have more of a core, so that we knew where he was going.
And how do I always feel like people in the organizations and executive management and stuff again, I don't think they understand what an asset the board can be, because like we said at the very beginning, it's often seen as, I mean, I'll be honest, and earlier in my career it was like, oh no, the board meeting's coming up, and for a month or so we'd just be preparing for it, and it was really an exercise in getting through it, right?
I understand, especially from, I get it. And you're 100% right. Like when I've been on boards, you're typically, the way it normally works for an INED, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, independent non-executive director.
Yeah,
We typically get a board pack on Sunday night.
yeah,
The
yeah.
manager's been working all weekend. You get a big board pack of like 100 pages
Mhm.
on Sunday night, and you're meant to read that on Monday. And the board meeting starts on Tuesday. You've got a committee meeting on Tuesday, and then Wednesday you've got a committee meeting, and then the full board meeting.
Yeah,
So it's and it's just a grind. And
yeah.
it does feel a bit like you're rubber stamping things, and you try to feign challenge, like, okay, let me
Mhm.
try and challenge the
Yeah.
management team. And it seems like a joke.
Mhm.
But let me tell you, when the sky is falling, that's when they start earning their keep. And
Right.
I've been a chairman on several boards. I've been non-executive director. And I'll give you an example. Wirecard, you remember Wirecard? I don't know if
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
Wirecard is like the Enron of Europe.
Mhm.
And I was put on 9 boards after the bottom fell out. So I was there
Right.
part of the cleanup crew. So once the bottom fell out, they asked me to go chair a number of boards so that I could figure out who knew what when, look at the flow
Right.
of funds, talk to the regulators, deal with the police. I mean, every single day there was something different happening. I had to figure out intellectual property rights. What were our assets? What could we sell? How could we recover the most funds for the shareholders, for the creditors? So, that, yeah, unfortunately, it becomes a full-time job. And not only a full-time job, it's 24/7.
Right.
So maybe you don't earn, maybe you're not really earning your money when you're eating those donuts and you're having nice lunches. But when things go wrong, you
Mhm.
could go to jail
Yeah, that's true. That's
if
true.
you don't handle things the right way.
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, how can management better understand like how to collaborate better with the board, or to use the board in more proactive, more better ways, as opposed to, as I said, as opposed to just dreading this once or twice a year thing that you have to get through.
Yeah, well, I try to work with the board the other way around. So
Right.
it's not up to the employees to figure out how to work with the board. It's about the board figuring out how to work with the employees. And I really believe in skip levels.
Hmm.
So what I always do with my board meetings is I always have the board meeting on the second half of the day, but in the first half of the day, we have all of the different teams come and talk to us. And we just sit there and we just listen.
Right.
We put a friendly face out there. We let them know that we're there. We give them our business card. We say, if you need anything, give me a call. They usually won't.
Hmm.
They might call you if there's a problem, which is
Hmm.
good. You want to open the door for whistleblowing,
Right. Right.
because that's one of the way that sometimes issues get surfaced. But you do want to just make sure that that door is open and that they feel that you're approachable and you're listening, and that's worked really well. And not only that, but I think it gives the employees a sense that they're being heard, and it gives them a sense that they can learn from the board members by interacting with us. And so
Mhm.
it's not up to the employees. It's You need a better chairman if they're not interacting with employees properly.
Yeah, no, and I think what you just outlined there is good. Yeah, because you're showing a human face to the employee. You're sort of telling them how to. Because, like I said, in some experiences in the past, the first time I met board members was sometimes walking into the board presentation. So, so there was nothing like what you're describing there, which I think obviously makes a lot more sense and would make for a better experience for everyone.
They should invite the board members too to, like, certain things. I'm typically in fintechs. I'm always invited to the summer party and the Christmas party. I always go. So there are two minds about that. Some people think it's that board members need to keep their distance from
Hmm.
employees to maintain their independence. But come on, if you're going to lose your independence over having one summer party with the employees, then something's wrong with you.
Yeah, and I mean, and obviously, like, the more you get involved, like you said, the more you have that opportunity to influence the culture and to because let's face it, most organizations, the culture grows organically, and it grows
Mhm.
by default from whoever the leader is, right? And maybe whoever the most powerful personality is. It's different if you actually start to be deliberate about it and decide what culture you want.
Absolutely. And that's where that's why I work with I'm not hierarchical. I just work
Mhm.
with the board and the CEO because that's where I have the biggest impact over
Yeah.
the organization. Because if you don't get to the CEO to help them figure out how to shape the culture, and what I always say is this is CEO, when I do culture work, it's CEO owned, board visible.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Right.
reason I say that is because in the UK, is like I said, it's a fiduciary duty responsibility for the board to own the culture. But when I say own the culture, we don't really own it. It's about it's being visible to us so that we know if there's something not. If is the culture transparent?
Mm-hmm.
Is the culture driven on certain values? Are people walking the walk and talking the talk?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to be aware of. There's a great assessment called the Collective Leadership Assessment. Have you heard of that?
No, collective
It's
leadership assessment.
It's owned by, it's part of the leadership circle profile. So it started off as a 360 for, basically for
Mhm.
leaders to see their leadership style. And it has reactive tendencies and creative tendencies. The creative tendencies are where you want to live.
Yeah.
That's where and there's on the left side is a relationship and the right side of the circle is task. So you're basically everything above the center of the circle is positive. On the reactive side, you'll see things like the three major things you'll see in terms of a culture or collective leadership is either controlling,
Mm-hmm.
protective, or complying. Those are the three families. And then
Right.
each of those three families is broken down into other things like perfectionism, people pleasing, autocracy, or withdrawing, arrogance. So there are a lot of things you can imagine on that bottom half of the circle. And when I do that for a company, do a collective leadership assessment, say for the top 20 employees, you see on a graph where they are living. If they're living on the reactive side, it is so easy to push them into the creative side because everything's a mirror image.
Yeah.
You have to go through maybe that controlling side to get to the achieving side, but you got to push through it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can work with the CEO on trying to shape the culture, the employees are going to benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last question for anybody out there who's thinking, well, I think being on a board would be a really great thing to do. What's your advice to somebody who thinks they might want to be on a board? What kind of things should they do to prepare themselves, or what kind of person should they be?
I think first of all, I would not rush into being on a board,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's regulated. So I always tell people go on as an advisor. If someone says, "Hey, listen, we'd like you to be on our board as a non-executive director," if there's legal responsibility for being a non-executive director,
Mm-hmm.
and usually there is. I mean,
Right.
I work in financial services. There
Mhm.
always is.
Sure.
I would say I would love to. Let's start with 90 days as an advice on an advisory capacity, so that we get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if all goes well and we have a meeting in the minds, then we'll go on to the non-executive director role. That's number one. So in other words, don't jump in.
Right.
The second thing is keep your eyes open and realize that it's kind of boring work. So it's not glamorous. It is very much, going through the board pack, and you really need to pay attention to the risk management. It's about managing risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the thing is that if you're jazzed by sales, I know the title of your podcast is SalesPOP. If you're jazzed by sales, then maybe the board isn't for you.
Right. Yeah. Because it's going to be so. But if you're more analytical, if you're more strategic, if you're more that kind of person, then it's probably for you. But if you're somebody who wants to just keep it, keep knocking things down, probably not.
And look, I'm not the right person for a board, to be honest with you. I'm more of a B2B sales girl.
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
I love growth because the companies need three things. Either you want to grow the business, or you want to increase the efficiency and reduce cost, or you want to manage risk.
Yeah.
Now, I've never been in risk management. I've always been in partnerships, sales team leadership, moving up to CEO. So that's what I've always done. Grow, 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 grow. Come on, strategy. That's what I love. Then you get into a position where you're having to figure out what your risk appetite is and
Right.
manage the business that way. It doesn't come naturally to me.
Yeah. So so you have to pull back. You have to reorient your risk appetite a wee bit. Yeah.
You have to know your blind spots, and that's
Yeah.
the most important thing. I mean, none of us know everything, right, John? It's like,
Absolutely.
so it's about know your blind spots, know your strengths, make sure that the board knows who they're hiring.
Yeah.
Make sure they go. I was on the board of AIG,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's an insurance company. I mean, how much when they talked about actuarial science, I mean,
Oh,
whoo,
yeah.
my head.
I can't even spell actuary, to be honest.
Exactly. But they knew what they were getting with me. They said, okay, we need Laura for X, Y, and Z. So they knew that when they talked about actuarial science, I wasn't going to get it. I wasn't going to add any value, and that's fine.
Yeah. That's perfect. Well, listen, thanks so much, Laura. That's been fascinating. All of Laura's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about you and your companies.
Great. Laura McCracken, founder and CEO of Blackheath Advisors and the Board Alchemist, where we can have a little bit of fun.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, Laura. Thank you for watching and listening. And I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.